Good evening, everybody, and we'll have our call to order. And we'll begin with our invocation from Father John Garretts of St. Patrick's Catholic Church. Welcome, Father, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to share with you some words that hopefully give us all a little bit of something to think about. They come to us from Pope Francis. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Help us to recognize the evil latent in a communication that does not build communion. Help us to remove the venom from our judgments. Help us to speak about others as our brothers and sisters. You are faithful and trustworthy. May our words be seeds of goodness for the world. Where there is shouting, let us practice listening. Where there is confusion, let us inspire harmony. Where there is ambiguity, let us bring clarity. Where there is exclusion, let us bring solidarity. Where there is sensationalism, let us use sobriety. Where there is superficiality, let us raise real questions. Where there is prejudice, let us bring respect. Where there is falsehood, let us bring truth. Amen.
Thank you, Father. If everybody could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If the county clerk could conduct the roll call. Okay, we'll go to public comment. Just a reminder, comment are limited to 3 minutes, and our first person from the public to speak tonight will be Carol Ivance.
Is that on? Okay. Hi, my name's Carol Ivance. I live in Hudson, and I'm sorry to say this, but as a retired RN with over 30 years experience in the sick care industry, I have no faith in the big pharma greed machine, which is basically all that our healthcare system boils down to anymore. The care is about the health of their profit margin, and that seems to be about it. There are still a few decent doctors and nurses still in the system, but after the pure evil that went on inside the death camps that we call hospitals in the last several years, I can't trust a medical professional just because he or she is one. We have a lot of questions that need to be answered about the way the former HHS committee mishandled the entire COVID situation, and we don't need to add a mystery factor at this point. I'm glad to hear that you will be able to question the doctor, but still, there are some good doctors that we know and trust who applied for the opening on the HHS committee months ago, and it doesn't inspire confidence that they were ignored and now we're supposed to be fine with a total stranger. We expect transparency, justice, and for you to look out for our general welfare. Why? Because you all swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and that's a very small part of what's in it, and I hope that you've all read it and you know what you swore an oath to uphold. Also, you are public servants and you work for us, we the people. The just powers of the government come from the consent of we the people, and we do not consent to anything that smells of health tyranny. I have nothing personal. I don't know this doctor at all, so this just doesn't quite smell right, especially because of those other doctors who have been ignored. So I'm just trying to stand up for the interest of our community, especially the children. I'm asking you to also do that. So please, if you don't know enough about this doctor, even after being able to talk to him, to vouch for him, please vote no. Thank you.
Next public comment will be from Annette Massey. Welcome.
My name is Annette Massey. I am a St. Croix County resident and a 34-year employee and a member of Staff Advisory, an employee focus group. This group was formed to provide employees an opportunity to impact the county's work environment. Recently, our group was informed of the intent to modify Policy 2.4, paid time off and long-term sick bank. The proposal in front of you tonight has come a long way from when it was first drafted and presented to Staff Advisory a few months ago. We received over 70 comments, questions, and suggestions relating to the proposed policy change. Many employees passionately relayed their concerns regarding the language, but the most significant impression left in their minds was unsettling employer trust. There is no doubt that we can work together to find a resolution to the issue at hand, but how did we find ourselves in this budget quandary? When the policy was first created, it was noted dollars budgeted by the affected department for the employee's retirement would transfer to the county's health insurance fund. Later, it was proposed that wages for unfilled positions would cover the retirement pay. And when the Retirement Health Savings Fund was created, it was declared to pay retirees for their unused accumulated sick bank hours earned during their employment. It was stated the county would charge a per capita amount to each department to fund this account. And just last year, Resolution 9 authorized a $1 million plus transfer or reallocation of resources from a recently closed, unspent fund because the RHS had a history of being underfunded. But why was there a negative balance given all those previous funding options? 3 years earlier, the Administration Committee reviewed the account, and the committee packet included a history of the account which showed $0 were allocated in 12, 13, and 14. Also, $0 outside the budget were transferred for the years 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. Undoubtedly, we experienced a growing retirement-eligible workforce at the same time that the RHS fund appears to have been starved. It was recently noted that the most all retirement-eligible employees with a significant LTSB balance have over 20 years of service to St. Croix County. Not every retirement-eligible employee is ready to retire, however. So in other words, the dollar amount you see tonight will not fly out the door tomorrow. At the very minimum, I encourage you to support grandfathering the employee LTSB balances rate of pay through 2023 as affirmed by the Administration Committee. Changing the rules halfway through the monopoly game feels like ownership of the coveted boardwalk and park place going through foreclosure. We all know that unsettling employer trust can weave itself through the employee ranks like a virus. Your vote to preserve Policy 2.4 with a minimum of grandfathering the payout clause is necessary to show your integrity to your employees who passionately serve the great county of St. Croix. Thank you.
I received a comment card from Patrol Captain Justin Johnson, and I'm not going to be able to read it. I don't think that'd be appropriate for the chairman to read it, but we will put it into the record. But we will be hearing from Lieutenant Chuck Coleman, Charles Coleman, also in patrol, in just a moment. And I believe that he will very eloquently also speak to the issues that Captain Johnson was going to speak to. So I'll introduce Lieutenant Coleman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fiedler, for the kind words. Good night, everyone. My name is Chuck. I'm the patrol lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office. While there's not been a vote yet to change of this policy, we are already seeing the loss of fantastic employees and departments within this county. This vote affects many of my supervisors, those who I supervise, and obviously myself. Prior board members allowed PTO the role in long-term sick bank accounts as a vehicle for employees to invest in their retirement. Please recognize the spirit of their decision and allow those who were promised this investment to be grandfathered in any future changes to this program. Prairie County boards recognize the sacrifice employees made to provide the best service possible to the citizens of St. Croix County. Employees who say PTO are some of the county's most reliable, dedicated, and readily available faces to the public. They sacrifice their time away from family and loved ones. My family has bared this burden firsthand. I miss birthdays, weddings, other sacred functions just to serve my community. The sheriff's office never closes. We can't afford the luxury of closing our doors during major holidays. PTO can't be afforded to everyone at all times. Since being promoted to an administrative position, I joined others and no longer receive compensation for work outside of 80 hours. I average probably 90 to 100 hours every 2 weeks. Our command staff is still responsible to our community, whether a death investigation or simple as maintaining peace at concerts or political events. Planned PTO is rather difficult to plan in my field. It was also assumed that all members of the sheriff's office are covered under union contracts during the administrative meeting. That's not true. Members of administration, emergency services, and clerical staff are not protected through 2024 via the law enforcement union contract. This will affect many members of our office immediately after this vote. I'm well aware of the studies indicating that I'm more likely to die at an early age due to my career choice. I seek no pity. I love my job. Last year, the ability to remain on the county's health insurance after retirement was voted away. Now the vehicle to subsidize paying for an alternative retirement plan is also in jeopardy. Incentives for employee retention, especially those who dedicate their time and expense to other family members and their own personal health, are now slowly being taken away. If the county board elects to modify the long-term sick bank policy, I ask that they provide an alternative vehicle for those who cannot always utilize their PTO. Instead of just 48 hours of PTO payout, allow those who cannot utilize all PTO to either roll into their long-term sick bank or give options for a payout into an IRA, HSA, or other retirement health savings plan outside of the county budget. This removes long-term budgeting issues and gives dedicated employees another way to prepare for retirement. Please don't hastily...
Lieutenant Coleman, if you could wrap it up in the next couple of seconds.
2 sentences, thank you. Please don't hastily eliminate our benefits without a viable alternative. St. Croix County promised compensation for our sacrifices. Please help support our staff with an alternative that protects the budget, while also giving those who sacrifice their time for a vehicle for retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Coleman. Thank you to all the rest of the folks who made public comments. We really do appreciate your taking the time and interest to make them. Are there any other people who'd like to make public comment? Any other persons wishing to make public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed. I will add at this point that following up on the first person who commented on the HHS appointment, when Dr. Anwar has agreed to join us tonight, it's listed last on the agenda that's been published, but the chair's prerogative is to move things on the agenda. So to accommodate those who are interested in that topic and Dr. Anwar, we will move that up on the agenda when he arrives. The last we heard, at about 4:45, he was actually in the emergency room out at the Baldwin Hospital, and he was going to try to get here as quickly as he could. So I'm just expecting him perhaps around 5:45 or 6 o'clock, but we don't know for sure when that will be. But when he does arrive, we will move to that item on the agenda as reasonably promptly as we can. Having heard no objections to the consent agenda, the agenda is adopted. Oh, okay, we can't move that quickly. We'll have a motion on the consent agenda. Who would like to make it? Supervisor Osnes moves. Second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. The consent agenda is adopted. Okay. Presentations and recognitions. Oh, we have to vote. We have to do things a little more quickly. Okay. All those in favor of our consent agenda?
We're going to use the machine.
Yep. Vote at this point.
Whoever was the second, please put in
Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Supervisor Lind.
Do you have to do the second, Christine?
There we go. All right. At this point, we'll move to presentations and recognitions. We'll call for presentation of our 2021 audit report and Jonathan Sherwood. Mr. Sherwood.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Again, my name is Jonathan Sherwood. I'm a manager with Clifton Larson Allen. I'm responsible for the field work, the day-to-day field work of performing the audit, as well as compiling and drafting the financial statements. So I've done everybody a little bit of service here, and I brought the brief audit summary here for us, not the 100-page bound book. And I'll also be just high-level comments at this point too, because I did make a very similar presentation to the admin committee already as well. Through all this, though, if anybody has any questions, comments, please, I'd be happy to address things as I go along. Obviously, Ken is here as well as Lee in the back here can help me bail me out if I'm not fully prepared for maybe some in-depth conversation or questions that you might have for me. So I know that the presentation should be being pulled up here. Before I dive into some of the actual financial results from 2021, I just kind of want to highlight the audit process in its entirety. Thank all the department heads that we have to interact with on a yearly basis, pulling some of that information to do a lot of the compliance type audits, get a lot of that information summarized and ready for us for the audit is a challenge every year. So I very much appreciate everybody from the finance department, administration, the treasurer's office. So thank you everybody countywide that we interact with. It makes the whole audit process that much easier. The audit in total, we issue from an independent auditor's perspective, we issue auditor's opinions over the amounts and disclosures over the financial statements themselves. So the audit opinion that we issue is known as an unmodified or a clean opinion, so to speak. It's the highest level of assurance from an independent auditor that we can place over the financial statements. So we're happy that we can achieve that result from an audit standpoint, just good results overall. Throughout our audit, we also then take a look at the internal controls of the county. We don't make any comment as to effectiveness of, are they strong enough, are they weak enough, are there whatever. We take a look at the entirety of the controls in place that are currently here, and we say, are there any deficiencies that need to be reported to admin committees or full county boards? So the next thing that we have to address or make comment on are any audit findings that we've determined raised to that level of scrutiny. So that we do issue, or this year we did issue what's known as 2 material weaknesses. So these are 2 items that are very, very common, and these are actually repeat findings from one year to the next. The 2 being material audit adjustments and then limited segregations of duties. Material audit adjustments just basically means that through the course of our audit work, we discovered that there were some things that needed to be adjusted that would have made a material or deciding factor that needed to be presented in the audit. So we made those corrections and they are presented in the audit. So through our audit work, we found those entries and they have been appropriately applied. The second is limited segregation to duties. So that's throughout all county departments, anytime that there's any financial data through the entire transaction cycle, mainly cash collection, that kind of thing. In some of your smaller departments countywide, we had an issue where you've got 1, maybe 2 people doing those types of financial activities without any backup or lack of supervision right at that specific time. So that's the reason for that comment as well. We do have improvement year over year as far as trying to eliminate the journal entry finding and as well as just other processes that are going on throughout the year as well. So from last year's, from 2020's results to 2021's results, we actually did eliminate a finding for some fixed asset reconciliation work. There was just some deficiencies there of getting that all cleaned up for the report purposes. That was been taken care of in 2021, so we're happy that we can remove that one here for you with these results. Overall, things are very strong and healthy, and I like to stress when it comes to segregations of duties, any of the committee meetings or full board meetings, you all here are very integral in the internal control process as well. You're compensating controls for that lack of segregations of duties. So anytime that there's a policy or anything that you're discussing, your obviously decision-making and review of those policies definitely impact the full financial statements in total. So I'd like to stress that at all of our presentations as well. Also then, just talking about the general county audit in total, the nursing home is separately listed as well. We do conduct a separate audit of just the nursing home or the healthcare campus, and then those results are then rolled up into and included in the full county audit. So with that audit, we also then did issue an unmodified or clean opinion over the financial amounts and disclosures of the financial statements of the nursing home as well. Some of the other things that we take care of for you, the unaudited financial report form is a annual report to the Department of Revenue. There's an audited version, which is due July 31st, which is then why I presented to the admin committee meeting in August, and now I'm here in front of the full county board here tonight. So that's as far as the timing and the process goes. As part of our audit as well, we do what's known as a federal single audit compliance audit. And that's just because the federal government, if they give a municipality a certain level of funding, we're required to do a compliance audit over those specific programs. And that's actually still being in progress currently. Obviously, ARPA, COVID funding, has kind of put a big umbrella over what we're required to look at. And believe it or not, they're still at about a couple of months ago, they were still finalizing all the rules and regulations that I'm required to come and look at for proper documentation for some of these programs. So we're still working on that testing, and that will be completed here very, very shortly, with that proper reporting back to the federal agencies will be completed by the end of the month. And then lastly, as part of the nursing home services that we provide, we also then file the Medicare and Medicaid cost reports as well. So that's just all the other stuff that we do besides just issuing a nice 100-page report for you as well. So just to dive into, again, real briefly, moving forward with some of the financial results for 2021. First, I'll discuss just some of the high-level things of just the general fund in total. So this is the general operations of the county in its entirety. Everything that's not tracked elsewhere is then dumped into the day-to-day operations of the general fund. So when we talk general fund and we say, okay, how is a municipality doing, we kind of take a look at a couple of key measures. And that's why I've highlighted here for you on the summary. There's basically 3 highlighted lines there for you. And it's basically your fund balance or your reserves section compared to your total expenses, and then we calculate that ratio there at the bottom for you. So again, your fund balance, your equity, so to speak, it's broken down into a couple of different buckets that we have to discuss for you. One being non-spendable. Those are items that you cannot spend because you either need to collect them, they've already been spent, there's a outside force that is preventing you from then spending those resources down. So you've got about $2 million in non-spendable items. Again, that's like delinquent taxes and that sort of items. Next on the list is restricted items. Those are items that are restricted for a very specific purpose from an outside agency. In this case, there's some grants that were received. These are excess grant funds that are held and set aside for a specific purpose by a state agency. The next bucket that we have is assigned fund balance. So those are all assignments that the county board administration can basically assign for a specific use, pull it out of this unassigned fund balance for a future use or a future need. That's about $1.8 million here for 2021. The good chunk of that is set aside or an assignment for parks and recreation. That's the largest component of that 1.8 balance. Then ultimately it all boils down to what's the unassigned balance. So this is just the true reserves of the county. We take a look at that and compare it to what does it take to run the county for basically an entire year, so your total expenses. Total expenses for the year, about $41.8 million. Calculate a ratio there, and it says you've got about 47.2% of unassigned fund balance can be used to basically fund the government. So what does that all boil down to mean? We've got a general rule of thumb when it comes to an independent auditor and an organization your size and your scope. We usually want to see about 33% of general operations is a set aside. Kind of, you can say it as a rainy day fund. We're not allowed to say that in the descriptions anymore on the financial statements, but so to speak, if the government had to completely shut down and not take another dollar in taxpayer funds or any grant funds, you could basically fund the government for roughly 3 to 4 months of just general operations without having to take in any additional revenue. So from that standpoint, folks like bonding agents or somebody such as myself looking at financial statements and says, what's the financial or the fiscal health of this organization? If you're about 33, 40%, somewhere in there, that's where we would recommend an organization be. You can clearly see that you're at 47.2%. The county actually has a county board policy that you want to have in reserves a minimum of 25 to 35%. And the county board policy states, it was going back a number of years, states that if you're in excess of that 35% during the budgeting cycle, something should be done in order to responsibly spend down that excess for major capital type projects, or if there's other opportunities that fiscal need in other departments or whatnot would need to be spent down for those purposes. With Clifton Larson Allen, we have the luxury of basically comparing a lot of the other neighboring communities as well in northwest Wisconsin. We do perform the audits of various counties in the area. And what we're seeing in 2021 is actually a significant increase in the unassigned fund balance during 2021, simply again because of COVID funding and ARPA funds. As they've been recognized as revenue in all of these communities, it's fallen to unassigned fund balance, which now these other communities are starting to spend down in 2022 and subsequently in 2023. So if you look at some of the same information from neighboring communities, you'll probably see this number. I have actually seen some as high as 80 to 90%, strictly because they received their ARPA funding in one year and then didn't spend it until the subsequent year. So some of that is going to be a timing issue. So for those of you that do compare different financial statements from one community to the next, that might be one of the biggest reasons why. The other thing I wanted to stress as far as the performance of your general fund is you have a total budgeted expenses, or total budget expenses to run the general fund of the county of $43.5 million roughly. And you do have a positive budget variance of about $200,000. So, when it comes to the budget to actual numbers, you came within $200,000 of what you said you were going to perform during 2021. So in the grand scheme of things, if you look at that, $200,000 on, a $43.5 million budget, you came within 0.48% of what you said you were going to do during 2021. So that's a very impressive and very strong budgeting system in its entirety for the general fund. So when you look at the upcoming budget season and whatnot, it's very important to have those discussions and stick to what has been agreed upon in the annual budgets. And clearly in 2021 you had very strong results in that matter. So. Switching gears a little bit, moving on to item number 2. These are known as special revenue funds. So these are funds that are set aside for a specific or restricted purpose. These are just year-end balances here, so the true reserves from one year that are going to be carried over to be available for future purposes. So the biggest one to call out here for you is the Health and Human Services Fund. You can see that the total fund balance there went from about $2.6 million and it increased to $3.7 million. It's an increase of roughly over $1 million. Clearly, that's usually one of the biggest departments that a lot of counties like to keep an eye on, because obviously Health and Human Services is usually kind of up in the air as far as performance goes. How do we compare from one year to the next? Clearly, in 2021, again, I can just kind of ring the bell on ARPA and COVID funding and how that basically additional revenue fell into these programs, and just due to the timing of when that revenue was made available, and obviously its uses and whatnot will probably be spending down. I would predict that in 2022, a lot of that information, or a lot of those reserves would be spending down. You can see that over the last number of years, you've been slowly adding to your fund balance. So overall, your Health and Human Services Fund financially has been performing fairly well. Next on the list is just your other special assessment or special revenue funds. So again, these are funds that are just held and set aside for these specific listed purposes. Again, normally I don't make too many comments upon these. It's actually back up under item 2 there, a little bit to middle of the page for us. So like the only ones that I really want to stress upon is just taking a look at the trend from going back to 2018 and where we're at in 2021. If things start going negative, meaning that you're actually overspent in those specific items, every year there's usually specific grants that go in there, and some of these items are supported by a little bit of county levy. The only way that you're going to improve the financial health is usually either just finding additional revenue sources to go in there, because usually the expenditures are fairly set from one year to the next. So if you start seeing something that goes negative and it continues negative for quite a while from one year to the next, clearly there's going to need to be some management decision there of taking a look at that specific project and figuring out what additional revenue source is, or if there's additional support needed from the general fund or property tax levy going in to support those activities. Item number 3 is the capital projects funds. So you've got one capital projects fund that we report, and for the purposes of what is all included in this fund, these are all of your usually one-time major capital projects. This is where all the activity is tracked that end up turning into fixed assets for us. So the capital projects fund, it actually ended the year with about $8.1 million in fund balance. And usually when resources ended up into a capital projects fund, they're obviously earmarked, and we know exactly what those projects are and how those reserves are going to be spent down in future periods. So you ended the year with $8.1 million in total reserves there. There is some ARPA and COVID funding as well that went into the resources of the capital projects fund as of 12/31. And then lastly, the type of fund that we have here is the debt service fund. This is just all of the debt service requirements, so all the principal and interest payments, all the activities flowing through just one specific fund here as required. And in 2021, we actually end in a deficit fund balance of about $366,000. Basically, all that means is the total amount of revenue levy that went into that fund was not enough to cover the principal and interest payments that were required to be made. All of the principal and interest payments were made properly. Just at the end of the year, we just didn't either have enough in there, or we just didn't follow the repayment schedules as they were presented for us in 2021. That deficit will be eliminated in future periods. So during 2021, you had roughly $4.4 million in principal that was paid off, and in interest payments was about $1.64 million. And then all of your debt service obligations, outstanding obligations, I'll discuss here in just a few minutes if you're interested to see where that information is going to be. Switching gears again here for us, we've got item number 5 is enterprise funds. So the county has two enterprise funds, or business type activities. The accounting rules and regulations in them is just a little bit different than the funds that we were just discussing. So in here you'll see some additional items that you wouldn't have seen previously listed in a similar balance sheet presentation that you have here, such as long-term debt, the WRS pension asset, and capital assets are included in these financial results. So again, the healthcare campus was its own separate audit, as I mentioned earlier. The couple items here that I'll pull off individually are the current year change in net position is about halfway down the page there for you. You can see in the 2021 column, it says $524,000 was added to net position or added to equity, had net income of $424,000. And just looking at the trend of the healthcare campus going back even to 2018, we've had negative results there now for the last number of years, and all of a sudden now in 2021 it turns positive by what it appears to be a pretty significant margin. Again, the reason for that, COVID and ARPA funding. So if we add back in some, not to get too technical for those of you that I might be losing a little bit, but we've got some non-cash items like depreciation expense and whatnot are impacting that number. So we've got on paper a non-cash transaction of about $1.4 million, I think, in depreciation expense. I'm sorry, that was the highway department. Healthcare campus is about $500,000. We had about $1.5 million in additional COVID funding. So all else being equal, we would have very similar results in 2021 as you did in 2020. So from results from operations without one-time funding from federal stimulus, I think it calculated out to be about $300,000 is an operating loss in the healthcare campus in 2021. So it is a little bit of a, not comparing apples to oranges due to one-time funding there. So definitely keep an eye on the activities in the healthcare campus. I know that that's been on various agenda items that I've been paying attention to. So hence the reason, if you're asking the question why you have a $500,000 increase, that's the reason for it. Highway department is a little bit different story there for you. Net change from operations, we have a positive impact there of about $854,000. Again, that does include the $1.8 million in depreciation expense as well. So that's included in there. So you take that non-cash item out of there, and your financial results of your highway department are very strong and healthy for 2021. No real items to discuss there as far as operations go. The only other thing to look at the comparison, the big giant outlier there is the $26.5 million in 2019. And as a reminder, that's when the healthcare facility was finished in the majority of it was placed in service. So that's the one outlier there, why that number is so much greater than all the rest. Moving on to item number 6, the internal services funds. These are internal services where, the things like self-insurance, the liability self-insurance and health insurance self-insurance. It's all those types of set aside, which the revenues and expenditures are the premiums that are being charged to the county and to the employees, and then the expenses are coming out of these, or compared against those premiums. So ultimately, what the goal would be, obviously, for prudent budgeting is to ensure that your premiums meet or just slightly exceed your expenditures or your claims going against them. So, and again, the thing to really pay attention to here is trends and any spend down that we would have, and if there's any additional steps that would need in order to shore up those results. So for instance, the health insurance fund, you can see it went from 2020 down to 2021. It decreased a little bit there, just meaning that our claims exceeded the amount that we were bringing in as total premiums into that fund. So that's either a planned spend down in order to control premium costs, or maybe we need to take a look at those premium costs with the help of your third-party administrator and just take a look at what premiums we're charging overall to employees as well as the county departments themselves, so the employer portion of those premiums. So you can see the results there. I don't have any other further comments for you on that one, on those funds. So I can switch gears again. Lastly, last comments I have for you. The long-term obligations, this is all your long-term debt that's outstanding as of 12/31/2021. There is a state statute that states that you have a legal debt limit of 5% of total equalized value. That amounts to just over $621 million in total general obligation debt that you could theoretically take out. Clearly, for an organization your size, that's very unrealistic. You're never even going to remotely come close to that dollar amount. So the amount that you currently have outstanding in that GO debt is about $54.8 million as of 2021, and that used up about 8.8% of your legal debt limit. That being said, I am very familiar with the $80 million that was issued during 2022. To factor that in, all else being equal, that would raise that 8.8 and it would jump to 21.6 million, or 21.6% of your legal debt limit. Say it that way. So what that basically boils down to is you are, obviously that's one of the highest levels you'll probably see for an organization your size. I would consider anybody that's in the 30 to 40% is very highly leveraged, meaning you're carrying a lot of debt. So 21% is definitely high, but obviously that's to be expected when you have a debt issuance that large. And it will obviously continue to decrease as you start paying off making your annual principal and interest payments. So I think if we just made all of your regularly scheduled debt issuance payments during 2022, that number would have dropped already to about 20%. So it's a decrease of roughly 2% already at the end of 2022, all else being equal. So with that, I have no more comments for you on any financial information. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Mr. Sherwood, thank you very much for your detailed report. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Sherwood? Supervisor Ramberg.
Thank you, Jonathan. You had mentioned the GASB changes that are coming about in GASB, and I see that they're at the end there. And from my perspective, I remember there was a GASB 34 change that creates a lot of work for the entities and for the counties and cities and villages, and that'll be a burden for us moving forward in our budget coming up. I don't know the how much it's going to be, but when those changes come, like GASB 34, is that a group of GASB folks that include insurance companies that want to insure? Because who's going to buy our infrastructure, like our sewer and water? I don't know any market for that if anyone's going to buy it. So as far as valuing it and depreciating it and that type of thing, the highway department, of course, always does that. But what is going to be the impact on our hours of work as far as a budget? Is it going to be quite an increase or pretty minimal?
So yeah, the GASB organization, Government Accounting Standards Board, they definitely keep me employed, let's say it that way, tongue in cheek. But a number of years ago, you referenced GASB 34, which is actually, I think the year 2000 is when that was implemented. When I first joined public accounting, it was GASB 45, and in 14 short years, they're now surpassing GASB 101. So they've basically put their foot on the accelerator pedal in the last number of years. And I do believe that it's directly because the federal government gave GASB some funding, and they've been rapid firing a lot of changes to our direction. So to your point, yes, actually, for your knowledge, on page 6 of my handout here is GASB 87, has to do with just GASB changes for leases in lease accounting. It sounds not a whole heck of a lot of fun and excitement from the average person, but it's just driving public accountants in the state and local government sphere just tons and tons and tons of headaches. The changes are not with the leases themselves. It purely is how they're presented in financial statements. So I could get up here and speak. Probably I've sat through hours and hours and hours of training on them. But yes, that is definitely going to stress a lot more requirements out of your administration folks. Sorry, Leah. And your department heads, anybody that's in in making those financial decisions of taking out leases for equipment, copiers, whatever. It used to be a very easy test for us, easy is relative speaking, of how to present those in those financial instruments. Well, it's making it a lot more complex, and we have to take a look and basically detail review all of your lease contracts that are out there to figure out if it does or if it does not qualify, and at times then make special requests of GASB out there to say, here's our situation, how do we implement this? So it's going to add quite a bit of time to county staff as well as us in order to implement all of these GASB changes.
Supervisor Hanson.
Were there any audit findings?
Overall, as far as compliance findings, no, there have not been any compliance findings. What I would say is material weaknesses are those 2 items that I mentioned at the start of my presentation.
Excellent, thank you.
Supervisor Barkla.
Just glossing back over the nursing home numbers. So is it correct to say that if we didn't have ARPA dollars in that budget, we would be at $1 million deficit, thereabouts?
I'd have to analyze those numbers a little bit more specifically, so I won't quote you an exact loss. I think I had it around like $300,000 in operating loss, and that's excluding any depreciation numbers.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, it would be an operational loss as consistent for going back to 2018.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Sherwood? Seeing none, well, thank you, Mr. Sherwood. Appreciate all your hard effort, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is our county administrator's report, financial update, and I'll have him just sequentially hit both the government center addition update and his financial report.
Thank you, Chair Fiedler. So on the government center update, it's not a huge update this month. I just want to make sure that we keep it on the agenda so that if there are questions coming up over this rather large project that we have, you have a chance to ask them. Where we're at right now is we're getting real close to bidding out the first of the 2 major bid packages. The first part of that's going to be the core and shell. So basically the outside walls, the infrastructure, the columns, that part of it will be bid out very shortly. We'll have those results in 2 months. And then the second bid will be next February, where we bid out basically the interior build out and the remodeling part of the project. So those are the 2 big dollar amounts we're waiting for. Next month, we will have the team back in, and I think we'll have updated cost projections for you. So they're working on that right now. I haven't seen any data yet, but next month we'll have that information for you. Otherwise, are there any questions on the government center project? We're still working on it. The financial report then, starting on page 46 of your packet. If you look at the revenues coming in, we're doing really well. We're up to about 60% of our revenues through the end of July. And then when you scroll down to the end of the financial report and you look at our expenses, we're right about 50%, 52% of our expenses. So revenues are exceeding expenses. Even Jonathan would say that's a good thing. So that's where we're at on the financial. Are there any questions on the financial reports or the finances of the county at this point? All right. Also in the report then is your capital projects and your ARPA report to show you where all those special projects are individually.
If there are no questions for Administrator Witt, we'll move right to our business items. Item number 1 is a resolution designating the public safety answering point for St. Croix County. Do we have a motion to bring that to the floor? I recognize Supervisor Leaf.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resolution to designate the St. Croix County Sheriff Emergency Communications Center as the public safety answering point for the county.
Is there a second? Supervisor Adams.
Chair, I second the motion.
A motion's been made and seconded. Is there any debate? Supervisor Leaf and Adams second. Yep. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, we'll have a voice vote. I think it was
It'll be
appropriate.
a vote on there.
Do we need to have that?
Yeah, so there won't be any voice votes tonight. They'll all be on here.
Okay, I guess we're not going to have any voice votes tonight, so we'll vote with our electronic voting.
He's absent.
Okay, the motion is approved, and we'll move on to the next item of business. Resolution to repurpose the Katy Roads Memorial Memory Care Center to a medically monitored withdrawal management facility. Is there a motion to bring that to the floor? I recognize Supervisor Cook.
I move to approve the resolution to repurpose the Katy Roads Memorial Care Center to a medically monitored withdrawal management facility.
Second by Supervisor Hanson.
I might interject here at this point, as you guys start the discussion, that the grant that we had hoped to get in order to make this actually happen, we've already been informed that we are not getting that grant, which kind of makes this a moot point. So at this point, I'd recommend that you table the resolution.
Supervisor Hanson.
Microphone, please, Dan.
Are you asking that we table to a point uncertain?
I think just correct, table it to a point uncertain, because if we have another opportunity for a grant, we would bring it back and forward, although that's fairly unlikely at this point.
Then I'd ask continue with the point, I'd ask parliamentarian, what do we do with the original motion then?
If you approve a motion to table it, then that tables
away.
it, and there, you don't have to do anything on the original motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table this to a date uncertain.
Is there a second? Second. Supervisor Burning. Any discussion?
No discussion on a motion to table.
Sorry. Okay, hearing none, we'll vote.
Confirm.
Motion to table is adopted. Next item on our business is the third item on our agenda, the resolution amending personnel policies. On this, I'm going to ask, going to have a motion to bring it to the floor, and Supervisor Cook.
I move to approve the resolution amending personnel policies.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, who did that? Supervisor Carlson. Second. Discussion, and I'd like to call on Supervisor Witt to give us a description of the issue and where we presently sit, because there have been some new information that's come forward since we had the Administration Committee meeting.
Yeah, just specifically, there was an amendment made at the Administration Committee to delay the implementation till the end of 2023. So at the time, I didn't have the numbers to run a cost projection on that, but I have at that point. So I put a dollar figure of $420,000 on that delay. And so, as Annette Massey had said, The staff advisory worked with me and the department heads, and it went through many iterations, and we presented a plan that was acceptable to most people. And so the additional amendment at the end, at the administration committee, just adds a lot of additional cost, which was something that, I and at the time when we implemented, weren't expecting, so.
So just to clarify, if we accept the motion as made, there will be a cost of $400,000 roughly associated with that proposal as a result of the amendment that was made at the committee.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you guys had the dollar figure attached to it, because I didn't have it at the time of the administration committee. So that amendment adds an additional $420,000 of cost for the county. It basically extends out the grandfather dollar amount because there'd be more time for people to accumulate and put hours in there, and increase in compensation between now and then.
And the item is open for discussion. Supervisor Cook.
So
Followed by Supervisor Burning.
Ken, can you clarify what you mean by adding money then for the 400,000? Or is it just an extension of the time? And also, following up with that, if it does add, whatever that means, are there other sources of funds that we could use to cover that, to give the staff the 1-year time that was resulted from the amendment?
Sure, absolutely. So the way that that's calculated, so right now we have, and I think it was $710,000 on the spreadsheet that shows grandfathered amounts. So what I'm projecting is that that amount will grow by $420,000 between now and 12/31 of 2023. The reason is that, and the way I calculate it, is that there'll be 2 rollover periods between now and then, because we roll over the hours in December. So the beginning part of December is when it's rolled over. So really, you're adding 2 years of additional contributions in that of hours. And you'd be rolling them in at full compensation and at their full compensation as of 2023, which, we're looking at potentially a 5% increase in compensation in the 2023 budget. So 7,000 hours is the calculation I use, with an average of $30 per hour. So that's 210,000 times 2, that's 420,000. So that's where it comes to. The estimations that I've made, and they're accounting estimates, so they're a guess basically, educated guess though, is that the policy change that we have with the de-escalating scale of value for additional hours that go in, the way that we're modifying this policy, will get us to a point where the $250,000 a year that we budget for it will be enough to cover the annual outgoing amounts for the LTSB. It'll basically cut down the really big payouts. So that's how we've modified it, to save the program, but to make it affordable to within our budget amount. What we did, though, was we grandfathered at the current dollar value anyone that's over. So if your hours are in excess of where we would be paying, we've grandfathered that dollar amount. That $710,000 will have to be paid for somewhere, and if you want to add 420 to it, we can. Where we're going to pay for that, my recommendation anyways, will be a transfer of fund balance. So take some of the unassigned fund balance and transfer it into the LTSB to cover that. Those dollars then, because generally what I want to do with unassigned fund balance is transfer it into the capital improvement plan, because any dollars that we can transfer into our KIP means that we don't have to borrow those dollars, which saves the taxpayers both interest and debt issuance cost. So that's the best use of cash, but we will have to cover this shortfall some way, and that's going to be the way that we're going to do it.
Supervisor Burning.
Do we still have ARPA money?
No.
None.
We've allocated all of it.
How much of it went into the building fund?
7 point something million, 7.1, 7.2, somewhere right around there.
So Lieutenant Coleman made a pretty good point, and I thought it was pretty fair what we came up with, but that dollar amount really, didn't sit well with the Culvers I had before the meeting tonight. I think he made a really good point in that can we do something to take care of those people that have been kind of planning on that for their retirement as they're going forward? So I believe you said, is there like 110 employees that are impacted by this?
So there are currently 79 employees that are over the new limits that we have in place. So basically, let me back up a little bit, I guess, and give you the long explanation. So our PTO policy allocates PTO based upon years of service. So people put money or get hours in their PTO.
Could you
bank.
clarify what PTO is?
Yeah, paid time off is what it stands for, or personal time off, one of the two. So every 2 weeks, we're putting hours into each employee's PTO bank. That bank has a cap of 320 hours. When the employees are over their 320 hours, it rolls out of that bucket and rolls into a new bucket, the LTSB hours, long-term sick leave bank. So the long-term sick leave bank then is employees' stopgap measure if they have a long-term illness. So they're capped at 320 hours of PTO, but they can put additional hours into this LTSB bank if they haven't used all of their PTO. So employees accumulate that. So that's the main intention of the LTSB, is for long-term illnesses. If you get cancer, if you have a baby, if there's other things that you have that you're going to be off for an extended period of time. It wasn't really ever determined to be a retirement vehicle for employees. I think that's what it's become. But based upon my research, that was not the intention of the LTSB policy. So we're bringing it back to its intention. So we're saving all of the hours in the LTSB, but we're reducing those end payouts by decreasing the value of that. So that's, did I answer your question? No, I haven't.
Yes, it was a very long version of what you
Yeah.
But thank you.
That's where the hours are coming from and how they're getting in there.
Okay, so what if we have 7.2 million that we put towards the building. What if we took somewhere in the neighborhoods of 39.5, which is roughly $500 per person on those 79 employees, and use that $39,500 to pay out ahead whatever it is that they would have put on the back end of when they leave. So then they can use it to invest in an IRA or a vehicle outside of the workplace here. Something like that, just as a compromise, because yes, the 420 that's a lot. But something to give them one more year of just cushion, because some of them are, even though the intent was not to use it as a retirement plan, they most certainly are. Some are. And I just think this is one more, if we have to be pragmatic on this, let's not pull that, what we worked out in admin, completely out from under them.
Yeah. So the way that the policy is written, the grandfather dollars, so if somebody retires today or somebody retires next year, every dollar they have vested right now, they're going to get. So they're not losing anything with the way that we've written the policy. So we've guaranteed every dollar that they currently have today. So the amendment, what it does is guarantees 2 more years worth of rolling in dollars. So they have other options. They can take their PTO between now and then. They don't have to roll any more hours into it if they don't want to. So they're making a choice then to roll that in.
Supervisor Hanson.
The thing that I heard the lieutenant say that concerns me is the employees, the management employees who do not have the option of using that PTO. I had the occasion this past weekend to spend time with a sheriff's deputy who had been on duty for going on 16 and 17 hours and didn't have a choice in it. And I know that some of those employees are managers and don't have there's constrictions on that PTO, and they'll never see that PTO. I would like to toss that back. I would ask the chair to toss that back to the administration committee, find options, and give guidance to the administrator as to how to. And I know that there's a union contract involved and that there's some real hoops to jump through, but I'd like to see those people not get the shaft. That would be important to me. And then I would say, once we have taken these actions, after that point, I'll dig in my heels to protect employee benefits. So those are my comments.
Are you making a motion, Supervisor Hanson?
You know, water's been fairly muddied. I'm continuing discussion.
Supervisor Hanson was asking if this could be referred back to the administration committee.
There's no motion yet.
No.
I'm going to refer it back to committee, to the admin committee. I think we should send it back. I think we have to have options. I think the county made a promise, and however many years ago, to do this, and we need to uphold our promises. And I am concerned with some of the comments that came up about the lack of funding and where all the muddiness there. And I know it was before you were here, probably, Ken. So it feels like I'd like to know more about that too, but that's a whole other maybe offline discussion sometime when I visit your office or something. But it seems like we knew this tsunami, we should have seen it coming, I feel like, and now we're kind of punishing the employees for somebody's bad choices earlier.
I second that it go back to the committee.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if we actually have a motion. Okay, because I was just going to ask for a sense of the group if that was the way we would like to go, but we want to do it on a motion? We can do it with a motion by Supervisor Leaf, second by Supervisor Lind, and any discussion?
I'd have a question, a point of order on that. Are we separating out that part of this resolution that just deals with?
Can I clarify my motion? I move to refer the long-term sick bank part of the personnel policy changes back to administration committee.
I second that.
That's accepted. Any further discussion on that? Supervisor Ramberg.
Thank you. Yes, I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be on that original PTO committee, and that was patterned after a company called Good Samaritan, and they had one bank, and then we had to implement it as to how, with all our contracts and whatnot, differently, and that's why it's got long-term and PTO and long-term, all that in it. But the intent of that at the time was, from my recollection, it was you could cash in up to 25% of your bank, and there was no cap, and then you would use the remainder of the bank when you retire to help with health insurance. That's kind of a retirement thing, but it's not for retirement, like Ken was saying. It was to assist with health insurance. And then I did hear something in the discussions at the time too. It was cash in at 48 hours, and that's if the administration committee would look at that portion as we go to it, one of the options at the end of the year to cash in. And when we looked at it years ago, we had 5 hats: the property taxpayer, the county board, and the administrator, the department head administering it, the supervisor administering it, along with the peers and the employee. And the plan that we thought we came up with satisfied all 5 because it wasn't able to be administered, equity or balanced or however we want to call it. But I would ask when the administration committee does get it to look at not only what we're talking about here today, but also that 48 hours that I heard the captain talk about.
If there's no more discussion, we'll vote on the amendment to send the portion of the personnel policy. Oh, I'm sorry.
My question is, we're sending back the sick bank time, but not the PTO discussion. And there is some tie for both into the policy. I know we want to pass part of the policy to get that going, but they are connected.
Yeah, my interpretation is it's the entire 2-point section.
Okay.
Yep.
So with that clarification, if there's no more discussion, we'll vote on the amendment to send the LTSB portion back to the committee and
Piece of the personnel policy.
that piece of the personnel policy back to the committee. All those in favor would vote yes. And the amendment's adopted. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, we'll vote on what's left of the personnel policy package. All those in favor, vote yes.
Can I ask for a point of inquiry? Can you restate the motion that we are voting on? Please.
Yes, so you are voting to approve amending the personnel policies, specifically Section 2.19 related to work-related injuries or illnesses, and Section 5.9 regarding separation from employment.
The resolution is adopted. Next item on the agenda is item 4 on the listed agenda, resolution approving the county administrator's work plan and work plan report. Is there a motion to bring that before the body? Turn to Supervisor Cook.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second? Supervisor Austin is seconds. Any discussion? Supervisor Cook.
Yeah, I mean, this one is pretty straightforward. We reviewed the work plan that we thought would be appropriate for Administrator Witt going forward here. And you can see the 5 items on there. We felt that those were comprehensive of our expectations for the coming year.
If there's no further discussion, we'll vote on the resolution. A vote yes is to approve it. The resolution is adopted. We'll turn to item 5, resolution approving the 2023 through 2027 capital project plan and funding for the 2023 capital improvements projects. Do we have a motion to bring that to Supervisor Cook? Do we have a second? Supervisor Hanson. Any discussion? I'll just say this is a follow-up to our August Committee of the Whole meeting, and as a result of that, I know Administrator Witt made a couple of changes that reflected the will of the body at that time. Is there any further discussion on it? Seeing no discussion, we'll vote on the resolution to approve the capital project plan. The resolution is adopted. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, a resolution authorizing application for a lake monitoring and protection grant. I'll call on Supervisor Hanson.
I move that we adopt this the grant.
So the motion's on the floor to adopt the grant. Is there a second? So Supervisor Anderson? Seconds. Discussion.
This is a very straightforward.
Supervisor Hanson.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. It's a very straightforward, relatively small grant. It requires county board approval. It's for $5,300. There's no match. It's just to get money from the state. So please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll vote. Vote yes in favor of the resolution. Resolution is adopted. At this point, we'll turn to the item that's listed as 8 on the calendar. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break. If we could be back about 20 after, that would be great. Our next item on the agenda would not normally be the ordinance amending Chapter 30, and I know Supervisor Hanson wants to speak to that issue, so I'll just wait a minute till he gets back in the room. The last item we hope to have moved up, but he still hasn't arrived, is with regard to Dr. Anwar. So if we complete the action on the ordinance amending Chapter 30, won't repeat all of it, we'll go then on to our annual department reports at that time. If Dr. Anwar comes during that report or the report on the UW extension, we'll take up Dr. Anwar after that point, even though we've completed the business portion of the agenda. Maybe, well, Supervisor Hanson is returning. I don't know if Supervisor Anderson would have, oh, there's Supervisor Hanson now. We're going to call on Supervisor Hanson on the next item of business dealing with an ordinance amending Chapter 30. We need a motion to bring it to the floor.
I move that we bring to the floor for approval amending Chapter 30.
Second by Supervisor Shirley. Discussion? Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you. What we've done is made some changes to our parks ordinance that involve just clarifying the names of some parks and the hunting rules and some other little things, sort of housekeeping, when you can use trail cameras and for what purpose, passes and fees. If you've had a chance to read it, you'll understand it. There's a red line version in the packet. And if you have any questions, I'm sure we would be happy to invite our Director of Community Development up to explain.
Is there any further discussion or any questions for Ms. Denzer? Seeing none, we're prepared to vote on the resolution on the ordinance amending Chapter 30. All those in favor will vote yes. The ordinance is adopted. We'll now move to our annual department reports, and I'll call on the director of our Community Development Department, Ellen Denzer, for her report. Welcome, Ellen, for, I don't know if this is the 10th time or 12th time or whatever it is, but welcome again for one of your annual reports.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I actually have been director of the department for 10 years this year, so thank you very much. So you all received my annual report in your packet. I just have a few items I'd like to highlight, just a few major milestones, and then answer any questions you might have. I did note that for the second year in a row, on page 3, our revenues for our parks came in at pretty much within a couple $100 of the amount that we got in 2020. And we all know that 2020 was very much related to COVID. And 2021 was related somewhat to COVID, but also significantly to increased popularity at our Glen Hills Campground. As you know, we have made some significant improvements there. We're doing a big major improvement this year, and those things have all resulted in increased popularity and attendance at the campground. We also added an annual pass requirement for two of our boat landings, which increased some of our revenues. And we, of course, saw the new St. Croix Crossing Loop Trail have a major number of people and became really discovered. And now it's sort of like something that so many people love and so many people go to. I'd also like to highlight just a few things about the issues and concerns I identified. A couple of them are pretty important in my opinion. So I want to make sure I draw your attention to them. We've been working now since about 2017 on trying to do a really great job with water testing, groundwater testing, well testing, analyzing data from all the wells in the county that we've gotten from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. We've worked very hard to do screening clinics. So far we've hit over 500 people have been at those clinics. We've helped a lot of people find out if they should be doing more important testing or getting treatment for their water so they're not drinking high nitrates. We're trying to expand a little bit into another area that's been expressed by citizens as a serious concern, bacteria, but we are running out of funding. Initially, there was some funding that the county board had set aside, and which we appreciated for the first few years, and since then we've been trying to use some fund balance and been funding it through that. That fund balance will be gone in about 2 to 3 years. I did mention last year that I would like the county board to consider finding some funding for ongoing, keeping this water program going. And so I'm just drawing your attention that hopefully within 2 or 3 years, you do decide to find some funding that will keep going for this. And we aren't asking for a lot. We're asking for about $20,000, really. Otherwise, we will have to stop some of this activity. Another important thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is that we are doing, we have had a lot of turnover in our land use division. It is one of the hardest things in the county to do. I won't say it's harder than the sheriff's department or many other people, but many other positions we have in this county. But land use is a type of enforcement, just like what the sheriff does. It's enforcement and administration. And while we love helping people and making sure that a lot of development happens, which keeps our evaluation and all the other positive things happening in our economy, we also have a lot of things we do to regulate and protect our resources, especially our beautiful St. Croix River and all of our other rivers and lakes in this county. So it is a hard area in which to attract people. There is a lot of transition. Once we get people trained, they like to move over to the Twin Cities and make more money. And I can't really blame any of them. They're great people. But I just bring that to your attention because it is challenging, and we have filled all our open positions, and we're excited about that. We've gotten some really outstanding people, and I hope we can keep them for a long time. But it is a challenge in this county. The one other really important thing I want to just let you know about and bring to your attention is the hazardous waste situation. Every year we hold a hazardous waste collection program, commonly called the Clean Sweep. Clean Sweep has been incredibly popular. We've held it since 1989 in this county, almost continuously. And we've gotten rid of a lot of hazardous waste and kept it out of our groundwater and our surface waters, and also cleaned up a lot of things and helped our farmers, because a big portion of that we target just to our farmers. But again, costs are going up, and really astronomically. Last year, we moved back to holding only a single collection. We held a single collection during COVID. The costs went up again for disposal, and we've done a lot of things. We've rebid it out. We're working with the local company, Logistics Recycling, out of Somerset, to try to keep costs down. We're trying to change things. We're charging people more. So we're doing what we can, but those costs keep climbing, and that future of that program, I believe, is in jeopardy, and I would like you all to think about that and help give us some direction going forward in the future. So again, I'm bringing it to your attention and these were all those items were on page 5. So then I'll just highlight a few other positive things for our department. Page 6, you might notice that our social media growth has been fantastic. We have an individual in our department who does an amazing job and just loves it. Just loves everything he does and throws his heart and soul into it. We've increased just in the last year our Parks Facebook page followers 35%. We've gone from 3,800 followers to over 5,000. Another important thing I'd like to note is, again, largely due not only to him, but also to a new parks manager we hired last year. We held a Halloween event as a thank you to all of our parks users. We made it a free event. We had over 750 people there. It was unbelievable how huge it was. We're going to hold it again this year, and we hope to have as good a crowd. But that was a pretty big accomplishment, and we had really happy citizens. Again, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'm just going to jump to the back and point out that there are a lot of great things, great projects that we do. We reach out to people. We try to accomplish things. Most of our staff just love their work. They try to think of ways to make good things happen. I'd point out on page 18, one of the really good things we did, and it's not really shown very well in this picture, but the entrance station, our new entrance station at Homestead, we also reached out to the original family that we purchased that land from, who is still around and has been saving artifacts. And in case you didn't know it, the reason it's called Homestead Park is because the family we bought it from homesteaded that property, and it stayed in the same family since the 1800s and they had the original President McKinley Homesteading Act awarding them that land. And so when we bought it for them, they asked us to keep the name that they had used all along for their property of Homestead Park, and that's why it's called Homestead Park Lands on Perch Lake, exactly what they called it. So they also have been saving and had numerous artifacts from the time that they homesteaded it that was saved by their mother, who passed away in 2020. And so those artifacts are now on display, on loan to us in the entrance station. And I hope that all of you can try to find an opportunity to go out there and look. I personally wrote most of the placards, tried to make them entertaining, a little bit funny. So enjoy, and let us know if we've made a mistake on any of those things that we're not always sure what they're for. And with that, please take a look at our goals and objectives for this year and the many things that we're trying to accomplish. I think that this department, like many of our departments in the county, tries to be very ambitious and do a lot of good things. And I would hope that you would take a look at them and share them. And last of all, every year on my final back page, I always try to highlight some citizen effort, something we do with citizens. And this year, we had a family of 3 sisters who really wanted to honor their father, Wayne Willink, who was a county board member for a very long time and was very active. And so there is a new flagpole and a new marker at Glen Hills County Park honoring him. And we also held our first annual Parks photo contest for our annual Park Pass. And you can see the 3 beautiful pictures we received that were the top contenders. And then we took those and put them out online and let the citizens decide which one was the best. So with that, are there any questions for me?
Questions, comments for Ms. Denzer?
Thank you all very much. I'm sorry. Yes.
Supervisor Rotino.
Thank you very much. Regarding the water testing, how much do you need and how long will it last?
We spend, I have a budget that I've been spending of about $12,000 a year. That does not include our staff person. That's separately funded and that's safe. Every year we try to do a little project. We'd like to do more source analysis and we'd like to do more targeting testing, trying to help some of the older subdivisions, especially those that were built with 1-acre lots, to find out if there's any problems there. And those are a couple projects we put on hold until we have more funding to do that. So again, we're looking at maybe $20,000 a year. We have the money for this year and next year, and probably for a third year, but I won't say for sure because it all depends, as Ken and I have discussed. But I, again, want to draw your attention to these things so you can be thinking about them and discussing how you want to move forward.
Thank you very much. I think we need to look at that going forward to continue that. Thanks.
I hope you will. Any other questions before I? All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Denzer, for all you and your department do. It's a broad scope of responsibility. I'm going to bounce back at this point to the agenda item that we had as agenda item 6, dealing with Dr. Faisal Anwar to be our MD appointment to, or our doctor's appointment to the Health and Human Services Board. And just by way of informationally, we just got word that Dr. Anwar has his medical duties will preclude him from being with us tonight. So I'm going to recognize Chairman Telejohn of the HHS board to bring the issue of his appointment to the floor, and we'll seek a second. But then I'm also going to call on Supervisor Telejohn if he has an additional amendment to make to that. So call on Supervisor Telejohn to make a motion to bring his nomination to the floor.
Postpone.
First we'll bring it to the floor.
Pardon?
First we'll bring it to the floor.
I'd like to make a motion
to bring it to the floor.
Bring it to the floor.
And do we have a second to that? Supervisor Osnes seconds that. Now I'll turn to Supervisor Telejohn for a further motion.
Yes, let's postpone until next meeting so everybody can get a chance to speak with Dr. Anwar. And I think he's a very good candidate based on the interviews that we had, but I'd like to have more discussion so everybody is comfortable with the appointment.
So we have a motion on the floor in a second to postpone this till our next meeting. It was seconded by Supervisor Burning. And is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment, motion to postpone till the next meeting. And that motion is adopted. With that, we'll go back to our annual department reports, and I'll call on Kristen Buter, the UW Extension Annual Department Report. Ms. Bruder.
Thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you. Appreciate your time tonight. Good evening. So I'm kind of tailing it, so I heard I have about 30 or 40 minutes to speak with you about extension. I can go over to, thank you Supervisor Hanson. Seriously, just want to draw a few things to your attention for our report. First, I'd like to thank you for your continued support, myself and the staff for extension through the years and continuing moving forward. I hope you had a little bit of time to read the report. You know, we're a little bit of a different animal in that we probably hit every constituent in the county with all of our programs. So it's all over the board, from health and well-being to crops and soils to dairy, community development, 4-H, and horticulture. So I hope you have some time. You know, that's why it would take me probably a couple hours to go through, because there are about 6 different departments that I could speak to, but they have put in their information. I wanted to draw attention to how we reach our constituents, and we do that through a needs assessment every year. So each of our departments, through community contact, through written, through looking at our data, they create a plan of work, and it's specific to St. Croix County. So even though they're UW-Madison employees, they're here, they live in this community, they work with this community, and they bring that information to the community through these needs assessment. We also work with county departments and with administration at times as well. And so in these diverse areas of programming, you know, we do impact pretty much every constituent in St. Croix County. The other part I wanted to draw your attention to is just our funding. I know there's a number of new board members. If you have any questions on the co-funded, I'd be happy to address that. We go into a contract with St. Croix County, and we co-fund our educators, meaning that UW-Madison pays part of the salary and the fringe, and St. Croix County pays a portion. And every county pays the same amount. So it's not, it didn't used to be that way. So, but now every county pays the same amount. So I'd be happy to talk with a little bit about that. Plus the state, also what comes with your investment, me being one, I know that's enough in itself. But as the area extension director, I cover 3 counties, but I'm not paid by the counties. I'm paid by UW-Madison. And my job is to work with our staff, work with the counties to assure that we're meeting the needs in these 3 counties, including St. Croix County. Also, there's a FoodWise program that is administered through UW-Madison. That is a local program across the state, and it works with families of low income with the nutrition end of the USDA grants. And then, of course, we have specialists and we have program managers that support and work with all of our educators and making sure that we are meeting those needs. We would have really loved to see any and all of you to any of our programs, or coming out to the Ag Center and visiting with us, talking with us about the needs that you see, what we can do to extend ourselves more so into the community. So please contact me or any of the educators and come and visit with us. We'd really love to have you. With that, if you have any questions about Extension's report, I'd be happy to field those.
Questions or comments for Ms. Buterin?
What's that? I know, yeah, I know you all want it, and you know, Administrator Witt over there, I always get the eye because he knows we can go on forever. So you can thank Ken for that.
If I could add just one thing, Supervisor Austin.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the kids programs that you've got going on and what goes on, and even out at the Ag Building.
Kids programs, I'm sorry?
After supper, some of the programs that are going on then, and some of the programs you've got for kids.
Sure. Well, we have the 4-H program, so that's specific to working with our youth. It's a volunteer-based program administered here in St. Croix County. It's one of the largest programs per capita in the state. So a lot to be proud of here in St. Croix County, and just a lot of activities that happen. Our FoodWise program also works with a lot of our youth, teaching in the schools, working on that nutrition piece, helping them to understand, how to keep themselves healthy. We work a lot with the schools with health and well-being. And then we really work with kids through their parents and through their caregivers. And so it might not be a direct contact with kids, but it's how do we work with our families and our communities to enhance those programs, to protect, to work with, to really build these kids as solid citizens moving forward. And so we work with a lot of departments, schools, state departments as well. So.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
I just want to follow up. You and I had a good conversation out here in the hall. But I would like to thank you and your entire staff for all the great work that you guys provide, or the folks in our county.
Thank you.
You've got a staff that's second to none, and there's no doubt about it. And our county is a lot better off with you and your staff and the great work that they're doing. So I want to thank you all.
I appreciate that, and I'll second that. I think the staff is just bar none. I tell them that all the time. They're the best in the state. So I might be a little biased, but they do a lot of really good work. So thank you for acknowledging that, and I'll pass the word on to them.
Supervisor Hanson.
I'll make this quick. It was pointed out, and a good point came out in the Community Development Committee meeting, that what University Extension offers in many cases to the citizens is really value added for the tax money that goes into the efforts. And one thing that we did cover, if you'd give the example, please, was I'm struggling to remember specifically. Do you recall when Carrie came out with the she wrote a report with a county department? What was it? Do you remember?
She, so I believe this is what you're referring to, so Carrie, who's our community development educator, and Selena Freimark, who's our health and well-being, are working with public health here in St. Croix County to follow up on some building and working with leadership, trying and their strategic plan and the priorities of the county and how to move that forward. A lot of times when we have strategic plans or we have priorities, they end up on the shelf, and it's so how do we move that forward? And they're putting together educational programs specific to public health here in St. Croix County to further their work into the community and build that solid partnership moving forward. So, helping with their strategic plan a little bit, helping with leadership development, and then working to ensure that that it's been a tough year with a couple of years with COVID with the health department, and so it's also staff morale and working in that area as well. So those two are partnering together to address those needs.
Thank you very much. And what I hear there is that we didn't have to hire a consultant to do that. That's the value added part.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Bruder? Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Lind.
Looking at your sheets here, the bullet points, like under community development, do you have something that's more in-depth to what these bullet points actually stand for? Or, because we just have words. Do you have something with, definitions behind them of what's actually being communicated in these learning programs?
So are you referring, which page, I'm sorry?
Yeah, well, for me, it's 216. I'm really sorry. It's the community development. I think it's your
under the program
final
summary-ish.
Yeah, it's probably the page before the last.
Okay.
And it talks about the development of organizational leadership capacity building work with transformational relational leadership. Do you have definitions to some of these topic things that are actually offered with your program that bring relevance to these these words that are here? Compassion, resilience, strength.
Oh, sure.
And I understand there's a lot of stuff
in
the world right now. And so is there something that I can look at to go deeper into these words so that I can understand the program better?
Yes, absolutely. So Carrie is actually leading this across the state and doing it here in St. Croix County, and it's being replicated by other counties. They're asking for this work, and so she is bringing forward with public health and other departments and then other nonprofits in this area. She also covers Polk County, so St. Croix and Polk are benefiting currently. And those are the areas that she's focusing that curriculum on.
Okay.
And so I don't have that here for you specifically, but I would invite you to work with and call and talk with Carrie. She's very passionate about this work, and she would absolutely be able to share with you where she's at, where her research in this has come from, and how she's working with the communities to bring these forward for nonprofits, for government sectors, for public schools. She's worked with the schools administration to bring, that leadership, that more of that bottom-up leadership, if you will, helping that, relational, cultural sensitivity, those kinds of areas, so that, we can build those leaders to help in society as we move forward. So I would encourage you to talk with Carrie about her work in that area specifically.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? I'll just add one quick thing. I know that our new director of Justice Support Services has been working very closely with UW Extension in Madison on a couple of projects, and they just came through successfully, and he really jumped through some hoops in August to speak with those people. So we will be getting 2 programs from University City portion of UW Extension coming to Justice Support Services in the next couple of months.
I just heard about that myself, so
exactly.
that's
Just
fantastic.
happened. So thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good day.
Our next item of business is request for future agenda items. I'm just going to ask for a sense of the group. I know at the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee meeting last time around, we talked a little bit about overdosing and the tremendous number of deaths that had occurred. And we were going to have at our next meeting a presentation on the use of Narcan to help prevent deaths. And we just got thinking, talking with a couple of people, maybe the entire board might like a short presentation on that. It's not that short, but it would be about a 5 to 10 minute presentation. And I believe we would all be given several Narcan packets to take away with us, to put in our cars, our homes, or give to friends or others who might need them. And so is there just a sense of the board that might be a worthwhile presentation at our next meeting? I don't see any negatives, so I'll just mention this to Chairman Long when he returns, that we might want to have that presentation and work it out with Ken and that staff member. County Clerk's report, correspondence, rezoning? Nothing to report. Any other announcements?
Committee of the Whole for budget review. So we're looking at either Wednesday or Thursday, October 5th or 6th. It'd be a morning meeting. So I don't know if there's a strong preference one way or another between that Wednesday or Thursday.
Ken is looking at me because I might have a conflict on the 6th, so I was asking if we could do it on the 5th. But we want to have the sense of the board if the 5th works just as well as the 6th.
First thing in the morning?
Yes.
8 o'clock?
Correct.
Not 10 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Well, Joe, we'll work with the administrator on that, and he'll put out a notice very shortly as to which date he selects.
All right.
Should I just block off both dates then?
Well, just for the next couple of days.
It's the budget review, so we might need 2 full days.
Usually this takes about 2 hours.
Yeah. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we're looking, there's a narrow window of when we are able to do this. So we've really narrowed it down to either the 5th or the 6th. If there's a strong preference one way or the other, you can let me know. We can clarify that. The 5th, Sean's pleading the 5th. Mike, Tim.
Okay.
It's looking like the 5th. Or we schedule our department head meeting. Sorry, guys.
Are there any other further announcements? Seeing none, oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Cook, I'm sorry.
That's all right, no big deal. So I just wanted to mention that St. Croix Economic Development Corporation is proclaiming September 15th as Craft Brewing Day. So if you need an excuse to go out and support our local establishments across St. Croix County, that would be a good day.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? Seeing none, the board is adjourned at 6:50. Thank you.